if you had never violated the rules or never asked the rules to be violated, you could do that. You're not here at Clarksville, so.
Talking about my relatives.
I don't mind. How are you? Good. Happy to be here. What?
Does she even know our names to do roll call?
She does, actually.
She has a list.
Does she?
And you know what?
Supposed to be locked from the outside.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a little after 6. Sorry about that. We will go ahead and get started. I will call to order this public hearing work session for February the 13th. Who's going to call the roll for us tonight? Anybody?
I suppose I can do that this evening. Councilman Jimmy First.
Here.
Councilman John Mesa. Here. Councilwoman Leslie Robson. This is pressure on. Mayor Brian Mock.
Here.
Councilmember Paul Snowball.
Here.
Councilmember Elmer Vite.
Present.
See, it's hard, ain't it? That's what I go through
pressure.
when somebody makes a motion and I have to think for a minute to remember their name. It's not because I don't know them. It's just that's hard. That's hard. I always do.
Because in your brain you're like, I can't
I
forget
got
that
you
name.
now, though, Paul. All right. If someone could approve the agenda for me.
Motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the agenda as submitted. Any discussion? All in favor? And that is unanimous.
Yes, I have you on.
All right. Under announcements and presentations this evening, looks like first up we have some words from our friends at 3715 Longview Drive. This is an informational presentation. This is unique for us, so we'll try to keep it to the same rules for a public hearing, which is 10 minutes unless extended by City Council. So we'll allow anyone wishing to present on this matter to come up to the microphone.
Mayor, I'm gonna request that maybe we go ahead and jump to the code enforcement presentation, and then they're waiting on one more person.
Okay.
And so we'll tag them in after William presents on his, if that's
Okay.
okay with the council.
All right. Then we'll move on down then to code enforcement annual update.
Mayor and Council, how you doing today? You doing great? City Manager? All right, so this is our annual code enforcement overview. I'm hoping that you guys are liking the work that we're doing. My guys are constantly out there working their butts off. So we're gonna go through this presentation and give you a little bit of education. So this is our team right here. I am the supervisor of code enforcement. We have 5 officers. We have 3 zones, north, center, and south. We carry 2 officers in the north, 2 officers in the south, and 1 officer in the center. And that is because it's actually the airport, and the airport carries a lot of that territory. That center officer is basically the migrating officer that goes back and forth from center to north and south. All right, so our mission is to promote and maintain a safe, desirable living and working environment throughout the city. I often get this: what is code enforcement? And you guys are gonna get a chance to see that once we start looking at the numbers. So there's a lot of people that are not familiar with code enforcement, how to identify a violation. So this is the process of preventing, inspecting, mitigating nuisance in public and private premises. We do enforce health, safety, and general welfare of the public. Our relationships is with community members regarding the upkeep of their properties. Our process and scope. So code enforcement process and scope is to enforce the city codes, property maintenance, illegal signs, lighting, vehicles, land use, which is zoning, apartment sweeps, multifamily annual interior building inspection programs, that is focused on the interior of that apartment complex. Our apartment sweeps are mainly focused on the exterior of that building. So because, you know, code enforcement can't just go inside of your house, we have to have permission to go inside to inspect. So when you guys adopted that multifamily inspection, that kind of helped us out a lot. I am very, very big on proactive enforcement. We're not reactive. We don't just sit around, and I've said this a million times, but we don't sit around and just wait on a complaint to come through. My guys are actively out looking for code violations. We are out there looking for actually delinquent out taxes as well, businesses that have not renewed their business license. And the vacant property registry. The vacant property registry has helped us out a lot to really document the amount of vacant properties in our city. I keep a spreadsheet of all vacant properties. Often I get an open records request from realtors asking or requesting this list because they may have something that they want within the city or want to do something within the city. So they inquire that property register list. So code enforcement by the numbers. I'm gonna look at my my sheet up here because I'm needing glasses now, getting a little older. So code enforcement by the numbers. As you can see, I compared our 2023 monthly average with the 2024 average. If you see total cases for 2023, that was 274, which increased in 2024 to 364. And then the total cases for that year for 2024, it was 4,364. Violations, again, for 2023, 261. It jumped up to 343 for 2024. So if you look at the yearly for 2024, and then for the cases, and then for the violations, you can actually see that jump. It's 4,364 cases, right? But actual violations, that number dropped down to 4,115 just because some of the things that was reported wasn't code enforcement related. Citations issued, 2023 monthly, 33, jumped up to 51 for 2024. For a total of 2024 yearly total was 614 citations for non-compliance. As everyone is in here, I always educate the community and say that we are not in the business of issuing citations, we just want compliance. So when you see that number, this number is basically businesses and residential areas just didn't comply with the city orders. Apartment sweeps, normally it's one a month, 2023, 2024, a total for 7. But you got to understand, too, that code enforcement has to go back to that apartment complex for follow-ups. So we normally give 30-day deadlines, 60-day deadlines, and 90-day deadlines. Anything after that, then we start issuing citations. I've spoken with property owners, leasing managers basically saying, look, we would rather for you to put that money inside of that apartment complex to fix it up than to rather to give it to the city. So that has helped us out a lot. If you look at 2023, as far as the case identification for monthly proactive, we're still in the 90% range, which what I love. And then complaints, that 1%. Anytime complaints goes up 1%, then proactive is gonna drop. So as long as we're standing at 90%, I'm hoping you guys are happy. And, you know, myself and John is happy with the department and our officers. As far as signs goes, you can see back in 2023, the monthly was 96. For 2024, it jumped up to 122. That's because a lot of signs likes to come inside the city and place them inside of the right-of-way. My team are trained to, if there's reoccurring signs, we contact that property, that business owner, and issue a notice of violation. If that sign is placed back into the city's right-of-way again, a citation is issued to that business owner. That has helped us a lot in the city. Permits and licensing, another jump. Back in 2023, it was 107. Now it's 144. Junk, storage, debris, that went up just a little bit, not as much as 1%. Vehicles and parking, that went up significantly. 2023 was 91, and 2024 it just increased to 193. Because we have a lot of people coming inside the city, moving inside the city, parking issues, storage issues, and just vehicle issues, period. Vegetation and grass, that jumped up at least 30%. So as you can see, the significant increase in cases was the signs, permits, licensing, vehicles and parking, and vegetation and grass. Our 2024 citations, again, was issued non-compliant, 614. 2024 OCTAX renewal visits, normally our tax division will provide a list of businesses that have not renewed. Licenses normally will expire on the 31st of December of each year. The city gives a grace period of April the 15th for them to go ahead and comply. Once I get that list in April, code enforcement reach out to these businesses. We give them notices to let them know, hey, this is what's going on. If they don't comply, then citations are issued. But there were 479 businesses from that registry that our tax division gave us. Actual cases came down to 399. Abatement cases. I know you guys are all familiar with the abatement cases that we've been doing in the city. One in particular is 2589 Chamblee Tucker Road. I know y'all are well aware of this property. It was a headache when I first came over. When I was with the police department, it was vacant. It was 2018, but with the actions and a lengthy court battle, we ended up getting that building demolished. And again, once these cases go to court, it's lengthy, all right? It's not an overnight thing. So we have to let it take its due process through court. Another one is Buford Lodge. Finally, we got that sinkhole repaired. As y'all know, back in 2022, we ended up getting the buildings demolished. But a job like this with that infrastructure on that property, it cost a lot of money to repair that piping in that sinkhole. So I am glad to say that we did it. So with hard work and dedication, you know, code enforcement was able to stay on top of it. And again, if code enforcement don't stay on top of certain cases, that case can actually get lost. And it can actually extend 4 years, 5 years from now again. So another property is 2266 Tally Drive. That's another one right up the street from the brewery. Unfortunately, that property owner had passed away, and that property just continued to go down. We had a property owner a relative of the property owner was paying the taxes on that property, and she decided she wasn't going to do it anymore because she was losing in probate court to get the property. So it continued to just go down. We ended up taking it to court, and we won. And I can say that we've just chosen a company to come in and demo that building. So that should be happening next month. We got 2 more other abatement cases that the property owner is compliant. They got permits in, and they've started renovations of those properties. Again, we have other abatement cases in the city right now, well, abandoned structures in the city where code enforcement is going to tackle so we can get rid of all the old and dilapidated structures in the city. All right, so our multi-family code compliance interior inspections. Y'all adopted this back in December the 17th, 2019. This does mark the 3rd year that all 45 multifamily complexes have successfully submitted the required documentation to the city. Before I came on, I didn't even know that I was in charge of this program. Once I saw it, I jumped on it. I looked at what had been done in the past. We did not have any, we had like 3% of submission from these apartment complexes. And the story was a lot of the leasing managers said that they just didn't get information about it. So I made it my business to visit, every year I visit every apartment complex in the city. I have them to sign off on their on an acknowledgement form saying that, hey, we are aware. We know that this is, the deadline is April the 30th. We need to go ahead and get these forms up in here. Some of the forms are in, I provided you guys a copy of this program. You first have that code compliance certificate. The property owner is supposed to get a vendor to come in, a certified vendor, building official to go in and do the inspections in the interior. You have the code, the copy of the inspector's business license, the certificate of insurance, the insurance of the inspector list, the list of all units indicating which 25% of the units been inspected, and a copy of the multifamily inspection checklist. As y'all can see, the code compliance certificate is the certificate that the vendor is supposed to award to the complex after they've passed all the inspections. So there's a yes and a no on that, on the checklist report. If they fail, then the city gives them a year to comply, which I think that's too long. I am in talks with John, and hopefully we can bring that down to 6 months, because having a year, if they end up, failing one of the tests, once they've submitted again, they're sort of behind on the next year because, getting a crew in there to fix the things that's required on that checklist, it takes a little bit of time. So I'm hoping that we can try to get that done by this year, of bringing that year down to 6 months. And as y'all can see, I'm glad I received this report today. If y'all can look, some of the issues I may run into, the vendor actually provided a form, and usually I look at the list and then I look at the reports. So on this particular list, y'all can see that it was 53 units inspected, and unit 343 is on this list twice. And on the report, 343 is not on there as well. It's actually missing 327. So I don't accept these reports until everything is all together correct. Everything has to pair up, the list and the reports. So this may be have time. So imagine your apartment complex having over 100 units, and you got to provide 25% of those using inspected. I have to go through each report and just make sure that everything conforms together. Our commercial sweeps. These are just before and after photos of commercial properties that code enforcement went in and did the inspections. And as you can see, the difference between the two. One of the buildings that we ended up getting demolished was on Chamblee Dunwoody. If you're west on Chamblee Dunwoody coming from Buford Highway, that old dilapidated commercial building that was there, they ended up tearing it down. You see the Wendy's that's on Savoy Drive. I don't think they ever put money into that Wendy's. Code enforcement went in and did the inspection, and as you can see, they made it like brand new, so.
Yeah, they just announced that they're closing. So that's why they put no money into it.
Gotcha. So our 2025 goals, our 2025 goal is to continue the commercial and buildings and apartment sweeps, tackle more nuisance abatement cases, inform the community on code enforcement and how to identify actual violations, which is one of the good programs that we have is Chamblee 101. I get a chance to talk to the community and let them know. One of the goals that's not on here is translating the code guide into Spanish. John and I, we talked about it a year and a half ago. It wasn't in the budget at that time because it was very, very expensive. So we're looking at to translate that into Spanish and get that down onto our south side and our diverse, communities. Reduce the number of complaints. That is hard because we got a lot of people moving in the city. And when you get a lot of people moving inside the city, you just get complaints. And then to increase training for the officers to improve their knowledge and investigative skills. I come from investigators, the School of Hard Knock and everything that the police department taught me. My guys are trained in it, so we're gonna give them more training into investigating skills. I know a lot of people, some of my peers over at the police department didn't think that code enforcement actually involved investigations, but it really does. We treat every case like it's a murder or, robbery. Even if it's grass or an inoperable vehicle, we take it from that to the top, to the bottom up to the top and just try to investigate every means of that case. So do we have any questions?
Thank you, William. Everyone up here graduated from the same university, the School of Hard Knocks. I can imagine that you don't get a lot of hugs when people see you come into their door. I know it's a tough job. We appreciate it. It shows. It shows when we're driving around the city that we've stepped it up. And as you said, it's not meant to be an I gotcha. It's to bring folks into compliance and safety and just a vibrant and safe community. So I appreciate what you do. Comments from council?
Just echo the mayor's comments, and what can we do to help you further? I know you said one thing in there about a year, dropping out 6 months, but what other tools you need to be successful? And you can come back to me on that if you need to.
Yeah, I will. I'll definitely give you a joy.
He didn't know it was going to be a quiz. I too want to thank you guys. It's just, and I really appreciate that the mindset of this isn't about getting you. It's about we would rather you put that money, instead of paying a fine, put that money into improving your structure. That's great. And I, like everybody else up here, we see the effect of your work. Thank you.
And I completely agree with what my colleagues have said. I find it very interesting, and I maybe would like to post a great big banner saying it. Most of the code enforcement efforts are not because of a neighbor's complaint. And I like to hear that, because I think that there are a lot of people that are, I'm sure they pester you, who told on me, who told on me,
Correct.
who told on me? And that's just a very low percentage of that is happening, and I hope that makes all of our constituents love their neighbor a little bit better,
Thank
a
you.
little bit more.
Thank you.
I think the one thing I'd like to add, I know we all get emails from residents and property owners with concerns about your team. The general gist of it is they're complaining that you're doing your job. They don't tell us, they're like, well, I was cited for this or that. Well, okay, well, are those code violations? Or does our, UDO say you can't do, well, yeah, okay, then where's the problem? Oh, it's that we're actually enforcing our code. That's not an issue at our end of things. We've had people email us and say that we have too many code enforcement officers and we should spend that money on sidewalks. No. So your team is doing a great job.
Thank you.
And please keep it up. If we were getting, I think any of us, we were getting emails that, there was harassment going on, I'll let our city manager know, but those aren't the emails we're getting. So thank you.
I want to echo what everybody else had to say, and it's not a problem. The only thing that I ever hear, and I don't even know what to do about it, but it's the people don't understand the due process behind once, somebody is cited. Because if it is a neighbor that's complaining, they want to know, well, I called them and it's been a month and they haven't done anything. Well, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
There's a due process. They have to go to court. They have their day in court. Or they have time to comply. Then, if they don't comply, then they go to court, get sent to court.
And then-
Who knows when that's going to happen as far as their day. And then usually the judge will also then give them time to remedy the situation. So it could be 6, 9-month process, and it just seems like we're not doing anything. But, so I don't know what to do about educating the public on that, but it is, again, this is part of the due process that we have in this country.
Correct.
That brings up a great point. Can you talk just a little bit about the evidence that you need, the quality evidence you need to make sure that a court case goes forward?
Okay, so, again, my guys are trained in collecting evidence, documentation, and all of that is in that report. When that goes over to court, they have access to our software. Solicitor gets a chance to see it, and the judge gets a chance to see it. I gotta say that, and I'm not tooting my horn, or none of my guys, but they take good evidence, and they are really good officers. So once it gets to court, it's basically saying, my officers are telling them, you may want to get an attorney on this because we've collected the correct evidence and enough evidence to get a good case. If it goes up to the judge may see fit that she wants to give them an extension to correct it. So like when you just said that 6 months that it may take, it may be due to that because of the judge giving them that time to go ahead and remedy that violation. Yes.
I'm going to give you a tiny little history lesson. The lodge, it was started long before I ever got on council. It took 17 years. That's how long that took, or more. That's the 17 that I know about. Before that, they were being, well, I think the mother or maybe the grandmother owned it, and then son, blah, 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 blah. And it took that long to actually go through the process of being on top of it in the first place. And I think that was a huge part of the issue. And then to go to court and give him his time to remedy and rectify and go back to court and blah, blah, blah. 17 years. So that's, and I know that there were a lot of complaints from the people that lived around there over that amount of time. I drove back there a couple times. I was I felt lucky to get out alive.
Yeah, that was.
Without being solicited. But, I mean, it's just, there's, as you said, and as has been echoed again and again, there's a due process. And the other part of it is you have to have the will to pursue it and to believe that you are doing it for the good of our community. And I appreciate that about you as well.
It was 17 years, but it was a lot of Band-Aids that were slapped on during that time to get them to the next
Absolutely.
round or whatever. So it wasn't like that it
No, it wasn't.
just took 17 years.
It wasn't like, gee, you're in trouble, you're going to court, or anything like that. The city back then, we were smaller and we were, whatever. And the city and the police chief and whoever else, believed that the people that owned it wanted to fix it. And so they kept giving them a lot of chances before they ever finally said, your history doesn't say that you're trying to fix a thing and it's getting worse.
Right.
And I think that the sewer collapse was the final straw.
Yes.
Yes. I
But
don't have to worry about
still.
that anymore.
Yes.
Don't forget the precursor to that one, Shallowford Lodge. Shallowford Lodge, yeah, right?
Shallowford,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was the first one, and we had bad players in both
Yeah.
those.
Thank you, William.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bit of a history lesson.
Okay, are we ready to circle back to Longview Drive?
I believe so, Mayor.
Ms. Sellers?
I'm sorry, I believe you guys are ready to go. I'll add a primer to this. This is a little non-traditional, so just wanted to explain. We've asked the applicant for 3715, they have a public hearing next month. This was deferred from January, that we were unable to, on the city side, get a public notice out in time for them to participate in this meeting this month. So at no fault of their own, there's actually a religious holiday in March, and so they asked if they could speak on this briefly as an informational item tonight. So I just asked that, because the public hearing is actually next month, that we keep it relatively brief, and then if anybody wants to speak on this topic, that they wait until the end for public comment portion, so that it follows that same process. And then, of course, this will be up for public hearing as a zoning item next month.
Okay. All right, Julie, you leading us?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, Julie Sellers, 1776, well, it's not a public hearing, I don't need to do that. Nice to see you all, and my apologies for being late. I have the privilege of being here tonight, and we do appreciate working with the city to try to accommodate schedules. We did have citizens that were planning on attending tonight, so thank you for that. I talked to the city attorney, and I thought the staff was doing a presentation, and so but I think that's not the case, so I wasn't planning on a full-blown presentation, was just really going to take this opportunity. I know I've reached out to you all, and this is the second time that this application has come before you. We do have some changes with this application. I wanted to just sort of highlight probably the two big differences, and I want to take responsibility for the first application that came before you. That included a stream buffer variance. That was out of an abundance of caution because of work that needed to be done in the right-of-way to implement the city's vision of having the sidewalks. Because this is such a challenge site with the stream, we thought it was better to go ahead and say we might need to be in this buffer because the sidewalks are in the buffer. There is an exception. So we've worked with staff and have confirmed, so you do not have a stream buffer variance, and I know that that is of concern, and that is not the city's desire to be routinely granting stream buffer variances. So I think it's important to know this application does not include a stream buffer variance. With the first application last year, we had also included some on-street parking. That was from conversations, I think, good intentions of really, trying to partner, understand after receiving feedback that's not desired. And so that was not necessarily critical or something that the property owner was, dead set that they wanted. It was really, doing that in response to things. So you don't have that. So we are very optimistic and appreciate the opportunity to come back before you. We will have, and I will be doing a presentation during the public hearing. I'll go ahead and just ask, because I know some of the people may not be able to stay until the end for public comment. So if you're here in support of the parking variance, if you want to just simply raise your hand, just so that the mayor and city council members, and then I do know that we do have at least some people that are anticipating staying for public comment to make comments, and happy to answer any questions that you all may have. And again, my apologies for being late, and
Thanks, Julie.
thank you.
How are we on time? Did anybody keep time?
We're good. We're 2 minutes in.
So
the most
do
part.
we want to go ahead and let them have a little time for those that
I would
cannot stay?
I would
or
recommend waiting until the end.
Keep it?
Yeah,
All right.
just so we don't run into any issues.
Very good. All right, so we'll do public comment at the end then. We'll move into public hearings for non-zoning matters, and I'll read the rules of order first. The mayor is the presiding officer. All remarks shall be addressed to the city council as a body, not to individual members. Anyone wishing to speak shall come to the microphone, give your name and address to the city clerk. Limit remarks to 3 minutes unless further time is granted by council. Not speak a second time until everyone wishing to speak has spoken once, and no one can speak more than twice. Please do not speak unless you have the microphone and have been recognized, and this is in regards to HB 581.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll take this one. So this is our third public hearing on House Bill 581. I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing about this topic at this point, but I'll run through this presentation very briefly. This is based off of guidance that we received from the Georgia Municipal Association. And as you know, House Bill 581 is a rather complicated tax reform bill that was passed by the Georgia General Assembly last year and signed into law by Governor Kemp. And there are several components of this this bill that impacts local governments, but we're really focusing on the statewide floating homestead exemption portion of that bill. which would, this bill took effect January 1st, and there is per the bill, several steps that municipalities have to take regarding the statewide floating homestead exemption. We're not going to touch on the floating local option sales tax or the property tax procedural changes. All of that information is available on our website for anybody interested, but this public hearing is going to focus on the statewide floating homestead exemption. So House Bill 581, as I mentioned, implements a statewide floating homestead exemption, a base statewide floating homestead exemption for all cities, counties, and school boards. A floating homestead exemption is a special type of a homestead exemption that is designed to offset or reduce increases in taxable value to property. So it's referred to as, like I said, a base year or value offset exemption. Many of our neighboring cities, they have freezes on property taxes or property values. This is a version of that as well. But the thing that kind of makes this one a little different is it's one, designed by the state, and two, it is adjusted based off of inflation. So this works by increasing the value of the exemption to offset inflation. So, for example, a property taxable value of $100,000 increases to $110,000. The exemption floats that $10,000. So the original base value of that would be $100,000. House Bill 581 is unique because the base year value is adjusted and will increase by a rate of inflation determined by the State Department of Revenue. We think this is CPI, but we have not been given confirmation on what this value is going to be calculated off of. The homes first receiving this exemption in taxable year 2025, the base year base assessed value will be last year's valuation, the assessed value of the property. And then for homes that are purchased or acquired or built subsequently after that, it'll be the preceding year after they are purchased. Anytime a property is sold, the value is reset. And so it kind of incentivizes longevity in a property because there's more of a tax value or a tax exemption value if you stay in a property longer. So the effect of HB 581's homestead exemption is the taxable value of a home may only increase at the rate of inflation each year. So essentially, controlling this will control how much the value of a home can increase annually. Homeowners are already granted a homestead will receive this exemption automatically, and non-homesteaded properties, such as commercial properties or rental properties that are not homesteaded, would be fair market value every year. So this new floating homestead exemption is in addition to any existing homestead exemption. So as you know, the city of Chamblee has a general homestead exemption that totals $50,000 of the first $50,000 of assessed value on a homesteaded property, and the floating homestead exemption would be added after that homestead exemption is calculated. So the process for the public hearing, local governments have been given essentially until March 1st. Now, there is some legislation in the General Assembly right now that is seeking to extend that deadline, but we don't have confirmation on that. We're going through the process as it was originally scheduled for us, but local governments have until March 1st to consider opting out or passing a resolution to opt out of the statewide floating homestead exemption, which is why we've had now 3 public hearings on this. This is your only opportunity to do it. Otherwise, it will automatically go into effect, and it is in effect permanently. So the decision to opt in, or the non-decision to opt out, rather, will then subsequently impact the city by this valuation or this homestead exemption being a permanent thing for the city. And so if you opt out, it doesn't prohibit you from creating your own floating homestead exemption or tax freeze or other kind of tax reform that's more Chamblee specific in the future. You would just follow the same process as any other homestead exemption we've passed in the past, which is with the General Assembly and a referendum for our voters. And so that is really the kind of update informational piece on this. I did kind of do a kind of a quick calculation, and you can see this is all based off of kind of what we know and what we've been told over the past couple of months. A very broad brush at trying to estimate the potential impact on city revenue over time, But as you can see, of course, as taxable property grows in Chamblee, that loss in revenue increases as well. So over time, you're looking at, roughly $1 million by 2029. So that is my presentation.
All right, anyone here wishing to speak on House Bill 581 this evening? Any comments from the audience? Questions from council? Huh? Okay. How you doing?
Council, Nathan Weiss, WEISS, 2278 North Shaliford Road. So I am curious where the previous public hearings have landed on this matter, as a first question. Personally, I feel like it is better investment to forego House Bill 581 and invest that in our community. So that's where I stand on the matter.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anyone else wishing to make comments on the 581? All right, seeing none, we'll move on into, oh, you got some?
I have a question.
Okay.
My question is, before, it's my understanding that if DeKalb County opts out, then it doesn't matter if we decide to opt in or out. And that's still the case?
That's the sales tax.
So that's on the part that I didn't get to. That's on the local option sales tax portion of the bill. So if theoretically, if DeKalb County opted in and all the cities opted in DeKalb County, then we would go through a process similar to the SPLOST process, where we all start negotiating an IGA with the county with a formula, and then that's how you would be eligible for the floating local option sales tax portion of that bill. But since that's not the case, and DeKalb County has, they've issued public hearing notices that they're going to consider opting out, and at this point, Decatur schools, DeKalb schools, Avondale Estates, there are several other cities that have gone through the process of opting out or have voted to opt out. It's just completely off the table at this point.
Every single person I've talked to has been in favor of opting out. Not one person's been in favor of this. And at the more macro level, the State House is now saying that they want to extend this out, the opt-out process, 2029, so cities will try it out. Hasn't been passed as a bill yet in the State House, but they've been shocked, absolutely shocked at how many municipalities, counties, and school systems are moving to opt out or announce they're opting out because of the impact on the finances of the city. One thing I do know is our citizens love our services, and if we took $1 million hit, those services would have to shrink or stop.
Anything else?
And you answered my question. Because I was asking about the status of the amendment, I guess, to this.
Yeah, the last I heard is it was in the Ways and Means Committee, and there was no further update on it. I think I'm sure at some point they're going to make the decision to extend the deadline, but I don't know about
They
the
referred
trial
to it as
period.
opting in and the try it
Yeah.
before, you could try it before you buy it or whatever,
Right.
then you could opt out later, but
Yeah.
then
Yeah,
that's their attempt to get.
Right, and they put such a huge time crunch on the cities. I mean, even just in terms of evaluating and assessing the impact of the state mandated exemption, that there wasn't the ability to really do a full-fledged analysis process on this, so.
Yes, I'm hearing we will have to make a decision long before they will be ready to.
And I will also add that this is going to appear later on the agenda as a resolution item, because now that we've done the 3 public hearings, you guys will potentially consider voting on this on Tuesday.
Very good. All right, we'll move into public hearings for zoning matters, and I'll read the rules of order for that. The hearing shall be presided over by the mayor. After calling the hearing to order, the mayor shall request the parcels of property which are subject to the zoning proposal be identified and read. Following such identification and reading, the development director's recommendation shall be presented. The mayor and city council shall cause the director's written recommendation to be made part of the record. Proponents of each proposed zoning decision shall then be allowed a total of 10 minutes for presentation of data, evidence, and opinion concerning the zoning decision. If all 10 minutes are not used, the proponent's remaining time may be reserved for rebuttal. Opponents of each proposed zoning decision shall then be allowed a total of 10 minutes for presentation of data, evidence, and opinion concerning each zoning decision. The presentation times may not be reduced, but may be extended by majority vote, provided they are expanded equally for proponents and opponents. Anyone wishing to speak shall come to the microphone, give your name and address to the city clerk, and do not speak unless you have the microphone and have been recognized. And with that, we'll move into 2828 Northeast Expressway.
Absolutely. Mayor, Council, my name is John Maximuk, and I'm Director of the Planning and Development Department. I'm happy to present the 2828 Northeast Expressway request for a variance. This is a public hearing. The applicant tonight is Gulshan Lalani. The location is 2828 Northeast Expressway, where Johnson Road meets Plaster, just across the street from the St. Pius High School campus. The variance at question tonight is to allow a dumpster enclosure to remain in the front yard of a commercial property. This is section 240-7, as you recall from previous similar applications. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Let me tell you a little bit more about this. If you can imagine going down Placer Road or Johnson, you meet at this intersection, and the property there is a relatively small building that has a couple of uses in it, a barber, a convenience shop, and check cashing. And the parking is located in the front there. The dumpster currently is located in the corner where the streets intersect. You have proposed enclosure in the end. The proposed enclosure will look something like this. It will be located, per staff recommendation, in a different location from the corner to a location farther down Johnson Road. You can see from the aerial map, if I had a pointer, you'd go from the corner down or south towards the edge of the parking lot with its neighbor. And here you have photos of the subject property as it stands today. More photos of the subject property. These photos show the topography from the Northeast Expressway down to Johnson Road. And you can see how tight it is on the side of the property to get a truck in order to locate in a more compliant location. So as I mentioned before, staff is recommending approval for this with conditions. That is to install the dumpster per the plans that were submitted with the application, and that the dumpster should be relocated to the opposite side of the parking lot to the southeast property line, as I mentioned, and should be set back 20 feet. The setback is so that a future sidewalk can be constructed there where there is no sidewalk there now, and that evergreen landscaping shall be added around the dumpster area to fully screen it from view. And that final landscaping design shall be reviewed by our department. That's the end of the presentation.
Thank you, John. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this item? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Very good. All right. Any questions from council? All right. We'll move on down to item number 2, which is the UDO tap room amendment.
Really quickly, I think there was a typo on this agenda, because we have Longview Drive single-family waiver application and staff action items, but it's not under the public hearing. Is that correct? Or?
That is correct, because it is an all waiver request. It is not a public hearing. It's an action item for the council to consider.
Thank you for that clarity.
All right. Who's doing the tap room?
I am, sorry. So thank you. This is a text amendment to the UDO for an update to the taproom allowed use table in the UDO. So as you recall several years ago, when we first created the taproom ordinance, that was before the downtown entertainment district was established. So the concept of a taproom and the use was codified as being only allowed in the planned unit development zoning district. And while that's great, and I think it's worked out well, there is no ability to allow for tap rooms in any other part of the existing entertainment district. And because it's in the zoning code in the other planned unit development district on the north side of town, we don't want to remove it from a zoning category. And so the purpose of this is to add additional zoning districts as an allowable use for tap rooms so that it can exist outside of this specific area and that one area on the north side of town. And the zoning districts that we would like to consider in the amendment are village commercial, keep it in the planned unit development, village commercial, corridor commercial, and the TOD transit-oriented development zoning district. And so that is the intent of the amendment this evening.
Thank you, Kristen. Anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the tap room amendment? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Questions from council? All right, moving right along. All right, under old business, we have approval of minutes. We have 4 sets of minutes. Anyone see anything that needed to be changed on those? Moving along by consent there. We have a second read coming up on Tuesday for the nuisance of commercial property ordinance. That'll take us down to staff action items. We have already gone through HB 581. Did you have anything to add to that?
I would just add, as you consider this item, there are several reasons, I think, from a staff standpoint. While staff is going to recommend that the council consider opting out of HB 581, and that has been the general conversation. But I will just add that, from an administrative standpoint, we don't know what the impacts of a statewide floating homestead exemption are going to be on our community. Makes it really hard to project out what the impact is going to be and how that aligns with the council's vision and your strategic priorities. From a administrative standpoint, the fact that the legislature took this on and they wanted to impose tax reform on local governments is a little bit of a threat to home rule. And I just felt like I would be remiss not to say that you guys are ultimately responsible for the community here as it stands with your tax policy and giving you the ability to make decisions for what's best for this community. And I think that has translated well over the years. Chamblee has obviously grown leaps and bounds in a kind of a blanket tax reform from the legislature on a community that's growing at a much faster pace comparatively to many of the other communities in Georgia. Could have very negative impacts. So I just wanted to kind of make that statement as a staff recommendation statement.
Completely agree. Anyone else on council wanting to comment on this item? All right.
Actually, I think, I won't go through the whole scenario that just went through my head, but I think the unintended consequences of this bill could be catastrophic if we have another, 2008 level loss of value in property where property values go negative below these current assessed values. I mean, if you think about it, if we're freezing the value of the houses, the assessed value, and all of a sudden the new assessed value is below the locked-in number, do you get to charge property tax?
No.
I think the ways this could go sideways are far too many to risk.
I agree. All right, with that, we'll move into the next item, which is the GO bond validation resolution.
Thank you, Mayor. This is actually just for the council to consider a resolution to validate the results of the election for the general obligation parks bond referendum that was approved in November. And so that is part of the validation process, is part of the steps that we have to take to then ultimately go begin the process of issuing that general obligation bond.
Thank you. Special thanks to all of our citizens who voted to support that and passed with almost 80% support, which is a $30 million bond to go back into our parks and trails. will make a huge impact on the quality of life here in the city. So thank you for voting and supporting that. Questions from council, comments? Okay. All right, we have the 2025 Discover Chamblee appointments.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe there are two. Brittany? Okay. One residential, two hoteliers, did I get that right? And one council member up for reappointment for the Discover Chamblee Advisory Committee.
Very good. So I would ask council to be prepared for that on Tuesday. Next up, we have the Northeast Expressway. This is the dumpster variance application. Was there any further comment on that? Anybody?
Yeah, I just want to say that for me, wood is not a good choice here. It's not a conforming material to what they have for the building itself now. We did this intentionally to beautify the city. Brick and mortar lasts much longer, and when you see in the wood and how it degrades over time. I just want to tell the council how I've shifted my thought process on this based on what we did on the Broad Street dumpster earlier. We won't build these for 50 years. We want to build them for 5. And again, the cost is not a hardship on these. So when people say that brick and mortar are too expensive, unfortunately, that doesn't resonate with council.
Okay. Anything else on that?
What is that building made out of?
Brick.
Brick and stucco.
Okay.
All right. With that, we'll move down to PZ 2025. This is 4133 Longview Drive. This is a single-family waiver application.
Okay, Mayor and Council, this is a waiver request, not a public hearing, for 4133 Longview Drive. And the construction of a single-family home is at question here. Continue with the background. The applicant is the Cussman Family Living Trust, care of Darren Cussman, and he's here. And as I mentioned, a single-family house is being constructed here, and that's sort of the basis of this waiver request. The site location is on Longview towards the north end, very close to the intersection of Admiral, and the property sits on the east side as you're heading up Longview, near that intersection. So the applicant's request comprises 3 waivers from Title II of the UDO, a waiver from Section 230-27B to not install a 7-foot wide landscape zone, and second, a waiver from Section 230-26E to not install a 5-foot wide sidewalk clear zone. Those are related. And then a waiver from Section 230-26F to allow the garage doors of the new of the house being constructed to be oriented towards a feeder street. And this is a survey of the property, an excerpt of some of the materials submitted, and proposed site plan, sort of site, building plan that's underway now. If you go by the house today, you can see it's largely constructed. Next, please. This is what the house will look like when completed, and the garage door as requested. No garage door there now. Next. These are photos of what the site looked like several days ago. There's been a lot more progress as of today. And this shows you a view of the sidewalk area in question. And still another picture of the sidewalk area in question. So, Mayor and Council, again, this is a request for 3 waivers, and based on the UDO, waivers allow the council to waive or reduce requirements of the UDO. However, a public hearing is not required for waiver requests like variances. A little bit about the background. The site was approved for a single-family house in September of last year. The house is being built, a 991 square foot house. that's located on more or less a corner of the property. It's a square-shaped property that's hindered by slope and by stream buffer. Plans for the permit included streetscape requirements that I mentioned, and it did not show garage doors, as I showed you, oriented towards the street. So when you get down to it, the project's being built, and now there's the question of the garage doors facing a feeder street, and Longview is considered a feeder street under the UDO, which brings the requirements that we talk about tonight. And since the streetscape work has not been completed yet, the applicant has applied for these waivers before construction is concluded. So that brings you up to the waivers themselves in detail. And I'm reminding the council that waivers bring with it specific criteria, and waivers are intended to relieve practical difficulties in complying with strict requirements of the UDO. Waivers are not intended to relieve specific cases of financial hardship, nor to allow circumventing of intent of the ordinance. And the following criteria shall be considered when authorizing waivers: features such as topography, high-frequency transmission lines, existing trees, specimens, significant quality, underlying rock, or other conditions outside the owner's control, to the extent that strict adherence to the requirements would be unreasonable and not consistent with the purposes and goals of the code. Second is that the proposal will not result in a detriment to the public good, including without limitation detriment to the interests of the public, and will not result in any harm to the health, safety, or general welfare of the city and its citizens. And last, third, alternative streetscape or building facade design configurations are provided. So these are the criteria that the council should consider when reviewing these and other waiver requests. The applicant's letter of intent was detailed and cited several factors, including the comprehensive plan, neighboring properties, stream buffer, the shape of the lot, and the slope on the lot. It was a detailed letter of intent that was submitted. Staff recommends approval and denial. Staff recommends approval of the garage doors facing a feeder street. However, staff does not recommend approval of the other requests for a 7-foot landscape strip being removed and a 5-foot wide sidewalk. So for the sidewalk, for the 7-foot wide landscape zone, and not to install a 5-foot wide sidewalk clear zone, staff finds there are no topographical constraints, utilities, or existing trees, rock, or other conditions that are prohibiting the streetscape from being constructed. And additionally, the applicant notes that the construction of streetscape would significantly increase construction costs for the project. And per section 300-8, as I just mentioned, waivers are not intended to relieve specific cases of financial hardship. So for the recommendation for the garage doors, staff finds that based on the size of the lot and particularly the amount of space that you're allowed to build on this lot, that the waiver regarding the garage doors is warranted. And that concludes the staff report.
John, questions from council for staff?
Was there any condition, I thought there was a condition if the council decides to approve. I don't see it in your presentation. There we go, that one.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry about that. Councilmember Mesa, you're correct. The staff, the recommended condition is that we approve the garage doors, but should the council approve all 3 waivers, including the landscape zone and the sidewalk, staff recommends that appropriate improvements shall be made to the existing sidewalk to make it in good repair, including but not limited to saw cutting and replacing sections with cracks. if there are defaults and if there are defects or cracks or damage from construction. That's what the second contingent condition is. And then last is enhanced landscaping shall be installed along the existing streetscape that meets or exceeds the landscape zone planting requirements, and landscaping may be installed adjacent to the sidewalk, between the sidewalk and the development, if desired. So, again, in sum, staff recommends approval of the garage door waiver and denial of the landscape zone and sidewalk. Should the council decide to approve all three, then the draft conditions are there for your consideration.
So I find condition number 3 very confusing in that, first of all, it seems like if we grant them the waiver from having to plant the landscape zone as part of one of the waivers, then we're turning around and asking them to put the landscaping back in. And the fact that there's no documentation showing like what that might look like, I mean, for me personally, just my personal comment is I would like to see some sort of sketch of what you're talking about, because I have no idea what condition number 3 is, and I would never let an applicant get away with some sort of like, oh, we're going to do some landscaping. We require them to have a plan. Now, obviously, I don't want to spend a bunch of money on a plan, but I just kind of, I have, know what, I don't even know what you're talking about, what your vision is with that condition.
Yeah, specifically, we would follow the requirements for landscaping.
Yeah,
for the
again, I
amount
would
of-
like something illustrated for that in the future. It doesn't have to be for this particular project, but in the future.
No, that's a very good question, and staff wouldn't exceed what's already in the ordinance for that.
Yeah, again, just don't even know what you're talking about as far as, then I have to go back in the code and find out what that requirements are and then try to visualize that, and I don't need to be doing that.
That's clear, thank you.
Other comments from council?
I do have one for John. I'm looking through the materials provided by the applicant. One of their notes in their summary says that the remainder of the neighborhood is exempt from the requirement regarding the streetscape and sidewalk. Is that it's exempt because they're not under construction, or is there something about other parts of the neighborhood that don't have the same streetscape requirement?
Well, staff would disagree. Staff finds that with this type of building on a feeder street, and that the requirements are clear.
All right, so then all of Longview is subject to this.
Given this kind of development, yes.
I'd like to hear from the applicant on why he thinks it was exempt, and then kind of maybe explain that side of it too, since I'm having to do my own work here. Darren?
Just a point of order, this is a staff action item,
Yeah.
right?
We talk during staff action items all the time.
But applicants,
We
it's not
we
public
can
hearing.
ask questions of the applicant.
We can, okay,
Yeah, we do.
just double checking.
Sorry.
Just for clarity, just make sure we're following the rules.
I think he still has
Yeah.
time limit.
I appreciate it, and
Yeah.
I'm looking for it in the code right now. I don't have it in front of me, but in essence, there's a provision in the code that says existing development is exempt, existing residential development, excuse me, is exempt from the streetscape requirements. And so this project triggers it because it's considered redevelopment or new development because there was not a home on the lot previously. So that would only apply to any new lot in Huntley Hills. So if someone in Huntley Hills were to do an addition, tear down a house, rebuild, that streetscape would not apply. At least that's my understanding. However, any new lots, so any lot that was subdivided, the new home would have to. So I think those opportunities are probably pretty limited, and that is why we refer to the rest of the neighborhood as being exempt. There's probably a few parcels where that may come into play, but it would, you could probably count them on one hand.
Questions for Darren?
And one of the things that we come across when we try to put in the streetscape on our own is right-of-way acquisition and getting that. Is that something that we need to include as a condition, or is there plenty of what's going on that piece of property?
So Longview is an 80-foot wide right-of-way, so that's going to give you somewhere between 16 and 18 feet from the curb until the end of the right-of-way. From the kind of rough calculations I've done. So if you look at the streetscape, I believe the total is 12 feet, is that correct? Between the landscape strip and the sidewalk? So the city property actually far exceeds that. Historically, when Longview was put in, it was supposed to be a core street like a Shallowford or a North Peachtree, you know, a yellow road, and it just never came to be. If I may take a little bit of liberty, I'd like to just note 1 or 2 points, if that's okay. Yeah. Okay.
We're within your 10 minutes still, so we'll let
I
you
got
talk
10
for 10
minutes?
minutes, yes.
Awesome. I will not take
No,
the
no,
full 10
wait.
minutes, I promise.
We're way
No?
off here.
No, it doesn't follow the same
No,
public hearing.
not
No.
10 minutes?
We can
Okay.
ask questions here and then get answers, but
So my question to you, Darren, is what are your points?
Okay, thank you.
thank you. That's just what we needed, yeah.
So I believe that the staff report misstated the arguments we put forth in our letter of intent as to the reasons why it really focuses on the financial hardship, and that is a point we make. This home is actually small enough that it would qualify as an ADU if it were to be built behind another home under Chamblee's ordinance. So we're talking about something that's very, very small. So we do talk about the cost being excessive as it relates to missing middle in that goal, almost 10%, a little bit over 10% of the entire construction budget, including land. It is an argument we make. It's not the core argument. The core arguments we make are actually based on the functionality. We talk about 2 things. We talk about the streetscape installation being dangerous or hazardous to the community, the sidewalk and the landscape strip, and then we also talk about it being inconsistent with the surrounding urban form and development patterns. So to be more specific, and I don't know if we're able to pull up the LOI page 2, installing the streetscape means that you'd have the existing layout as you have an 18-inch wide landscape strip followed by a 4-foot sidewalk. So to install the streetscape, you're talking about a 7-foot wide landscape strip adjacent to the curb followed by a 5-foot sidewalk. To do that, you're going to be walking down the sidewalk, and you're going to have to jog at 30 to 45 degrees to actually move that sidewalk over. You're following that for 80 to 100 feet, and then you're coming back over. This isn't really an area where you expect that. You're in a downtown environment. You've got sidewalks that are up and down. You've got manholes, telephone poles, all sorts of things littering the sidewalk. You're a little bit more careful. This sidewalk is straight. It's flat. It's in good shape. None of the panels are lifted. So to actually force someone who's been walking straight for a block to turn right, go straight for 100 feet, turn left, and come back, it's dangerous if you're not expecting that. Someone could twist an ankle, someone could miss that turn. And again, you know, the remainder of the sidewalk's not going to shift over because that neighborhood is exempt. The other piece of it that's dangerous or hazardous specifically relates to staff condition 3 relating to moving the landscape strip from the left side between traffic and the sidewalk to between the sidewalk and the home. That's dangerous, I believe, for a few reasons. One, if you think about the purpose of that landscape strip, it's to separate pedestrian and automotive traffic. It's to create a barrier, an isolation. So by moving that to the other side of the sidewalk, what you're effectively doing is if you have 2 people walking side by side, you're pushing someone into the street because they can no longer walk into the yard to make space for the other person. It doesn't make sense. You're creating a visual and physical barrier towards the grass and pushing people towards the street. A 4-foot wide sidewalk, you know, you're walking a dog. Even if you're walking side by side, you do step to the side, so it seems silly to push someone into automotive traffic. Also, you look at the intent of the code and the front porch ordinance that's within the Chamblee Code. We want to bring people together, right? You're trying to get people to engage with the street. So even from that perspective, this home has an oversized front porch. I believe it's 18 feet wide. You're creating a barrier and you're isolating that from the sidewalk. I mean, I can just go through a number of reasons why it's not safe. You talk about it being inconsistent with the surrounding urban form and development patterns. The rest of the neighborhood's never going to have that. It's exempt. It doesn't make sense. So those are really the main points. You know, I could go on and on about how actually approving all 3 of these waivers would make the treatment equivalent to the rest of the community, but I think, you know, just the danger argument in and of itself should be enough to grant approval of these waivers.
Thank you.
So the other part of the waiver, denial of waiver number 3 is that in lieu of, you could pay into the sidewalk bank. And what was that amount of money?
So the city has requested, I believe, $31,500 or so as a fee in lieu of installing the sidewalk. It's quite exorbitant for, for what we're trying to do and creating more affordable housing, which is a stated goal of the comp plan and what the city's trying to do. I mean, we're trying to create missing middle housing, and it's just fee after fee after fee.
I'd like to study somehow if there is not a way around the amount of money that is required in lieu of putting in the sidewalk and streetscape. And some kind, because I agree that I appreciate that this is an affordable house. And I certainly would like to encourage that to happen in our neighborhood, in all neighborhoods, really. But for right now, I'm going to talk about Hunley Hills. So, and it would be cost prohibitive for somebody to come and do the same thing that Darren's doing and find out, oh gosh, and, a quarter of the value of my home, I'm going to have to put into a sidewalk bank. Making the numbers up. However, I also would like to see if there's not a way that we could encourage creating a fund for sidewalks on Longview Drive. Because that's been an issue forever and ever and ever, and pretty much we know very well that we're not going to see sidewalks on Longview because nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to give their right-of-way up. Nobody wants to spend the money. The city's not going to do it, blah, blah, blah. So I wonder if there's not a way that, I mean, I know that we have the sidewalk fund for commercial properties and all of that kind of stuff, and that's great. But this is a single-family home, and it's an affordable single-family home, and I think that's different. And I would like to think that there might be a way that we could possibly get sidewalks on Longview Drive in our lifetime. Maybe not mine, but most people's lifetime, because it's an issue. It's a terrible issue. Everybody thinks that that white line that's painted next to the curb designates that that's a walking zone. It's not. And it's not a bicycle zone either. And it's dangerous. It's incredibly dangerous. And it is a feeder street. So I think this brings up figuring out a way that we can resolve this issue.
Thank you. Anything else?
That's all I have to say right now.
Anyone else?
So, John, what would trigger the rest of the sidewalk running down Longview to be brought up to the new 5-foot? Like,
It's the new lots, yeah, so, it's the new lots. So if others did, like I said before, if others did the same kind of thing and created a new lot, then this would be triggered.
all right. And
So a knockdown rebuild would not
that was my next.
have that requirement?
No, as far as I know.
Why not? Because if it's commercial, if somebody's doing, if they're spending 80%, there's the 80% rule, whatever it states. So that doesn't exist in single-family
No,
neighborhoods?
it's not the same, yeah. So, we look at these case by case and we interpret them strictly.
Got to get creative about this. Longview's got to have sidewalks soon.
Anything else? All right. Thank you, John. That will take us down to mayor and council items and down to council member first, storage units and smoke shops.
Thank you, Mayor.
Advocating on behalf of.
Can I
both,
jump
right?
ahead of Councilman first since my name appears before that?
You don't have anything on the agenda.
I know, but I wanted to know, did we miss anything on the tap room revision? Do we need to move that to first read on Tuesday?
Oh,
Or
thank you, yes, if you would like to move that to first read, you need to move it to first
do
read.
we need consent to do that, or that we know that's going
I
to happen?
made that assumption.
Huh?
I made that assumption. Sorry. I just
Well,
assumed.
you
that
know
we
what
would
they
do-
say about assuming things.
He assumed we would consent to move to a tap room, yes.
There you go.
Well,
All right.
I just didn't have my telepathy going, so I didn't know that. I know,
That is a fair, and if Sharon were here, she would be,
yeah,
she would be
Sharon
on
would've
top
caught
of
that,
it.
so I'm
She's
just.
much better at city clerking than me.
All right. I think we have consent to move that to first read. Is that correct? Okay, all right. Now,
Thank you, Mayor. For the people at home, we have received a significant amount of feedback from concerned parents at Chamblee High School about a smoke shop that's going in across from the school. So it started a lot of conversation between council and staff that there is no state ordinance that disallows that business type to be put within a certain distance of the school. Our only ordinance from a local standpoint is a smoke shop can't be within half a mile of another smoke shop, and we had to actually come up last week. So I started thinking about this, so I want to ask council here if we want to create ordinances that say that smoke shops can't be within a certain distance of a school, church, whatever it may be. And then the second piece of that is, and this is where the storage units come into play as well. We've had a lot of conversations about storage units coming into the city. Most of us, I believe, would be against new storage units coming in. Creating something that we did with the massage parlors in the city where we limit the amount of license, and once they go away, that number shrinks. So I believe the massage parlor, Kristen, keep me honest, was 13 licenses a year, and that's where it's 12. And
Yeah, it
that's
started
limited.
at 22, and then council reduced it down to 12. And actually, I don't know if Aaron or, I don't know if Julie's here, but if anybody can confirm on the license.
It doesn't automatically reduce.
No.
We manually, so to speak, did.
You guys start at one number, and then we have to honor that number as long as people are reapplying and
wanted to make sure of that.
renewing, and then reduce it down through attrition. So, I mean, even the massage parlors, at this point, there's nobody effectively zero, it's still 12, but.
And that was our goal. We just had 22, right? So we just took every
Right.
opportunity, so.
And I think the latest on that is we are down to 12, if not under 12 at this point, so might be 12.
So I do have a question that relates to the smoke shops, and that is, what about CBD shops and stuff like that? Is that regulated at all? As far as distance from churches and schools?
Yes, hemp sales are prohibited within 500 feet of a school. So, yes, CBD
And then
is
a
regulated
lot-
by the state more.
I see a lot of these products that are common to smoke shops in convenience stores. Is that just a loophole and that's just the way it is? Or, because it seems like if you're going to jump through all the hoops of closing down smoke shop specific businesses, that there's got to be a limit to, and it just kind of gets, that's where I'm just kind of wondering if
Yeah.
you're just being effective.
Well, so I think what Councilman First is getting at is basically licensing tobacco shops. And in doing that is, we'd have to construct an ordinance in such a way, that a Quick Trip or a convenience store would have to get a tobacco license, the same way that they have to get an alcohol license to sell. And then the rules would apply. So it would be the same thing. You would treat it the same way. Now, the challenge with that is that you have existing convenience stores that might be within a certain distance, and so it probably wouldn't affect them. But then going through the process, similar to our alcohol code, is, kind of through attrition, they have the ability to be grandfathered in until they sell or whatever it is, similar to a zoning matter. But we'd have to kind of dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, to Councilman Mesa's point, I walked into a BP on Peachtree Boulevard across from Whole Foods, and it looked like a head shop in there. Glass pipes, CBD products. I was very surprised to see that. So if we did craft the ordinance, we want to make sure that it would impact that as well, because it's very predatory, in my opinion. The other thing I want to talk about was also the storage units. We have 6 that I can count, and right now we have 2,392 storage units in Chamblee right now. And a couple, that's ChatGPT, help me out on that one. What these do is they don't create jobs. They're inefficient land use. Think about Guardian, middle of our downtown, takes up acres of our downtown, which I think could be used in a different way. I'm not trying to push Guardian out, but that's not at all safeguarding the listing. I'm not pushing existing businesses out. But limited tax revenue, reduced foot traffic, discourages vibrant mixed-use developments. I know we have tried to mitigate that by adding commercial to the bottom of some of these storage units, but we have the one in Claremont, it's never been rented. So it's just sitting there as well. And then it's often targets transitional or underdeveloped areas because the land's cheap. And I'm proposing the same thing on this that I did with smoke shops, is that we limit the amount of license we can have in the city to what we currently have, and to put this conversation to bed, because it's come up since I've been on this council the last 3.5 years, multiple times about more storage units coming into the city.
What does our ordinance say about storage units? We kind of cut them off, didn't we?
I don't believe, John, I don't know if you have this information off the top of your head on storage units specifically, or Gabrielle, but we don't have a regulation in place that puts a cap on them, but obviously they have to comply with zoning.
Yeah.
I know that there are other cities around us. I believe Doraville does have a limit or a moratorium on them, or does not allow them any further. But Chamblee does not have that in place currently.
Yeah, in my research, there's multiple cities that have ordinances around storage units.
I'm certainly,
We'd have to look at it through zoning, I think, because we don't have a specific business license for them. And ChatGPT is very wrong. There's at least 11 in Chamblee.
That was off my head. I said 6. They helped me with the doors, the number of
Okay.
doors.
Yeah, no, there's, I'm just sitting here quickly thinking about it. There's at least 11.
Yeah.
I would have challenged that too, but Elmer beat me to it.
Well,
If
that's off the top of my head, guys. I'm not a computer. Give me a break.
If I may, I also, to Elmer's point, or Councilman Veith's point,
Getting casual.
the city does not have, we have privilege licenses. So our alcohol, our massage, and then you're proposing, similar with tobacco, a privilege license. I believe the presentation just went out. Vivian, I don't know if you can check that. But if you guys want to regulate the business, the actual business, then we need to look at code that actually regulates the business. If you want to regulate the land use and the zoning, then we need to look at that.
Okay.
And in some cases, it's both, right? And so, for example, this comes up pretty frequently when it comes to, for example, hookah, or the allowance of hookah businesses, is we don't have a regulation in place from a business license standpoint that says you're not allowed to operate a hookah establishment. It's regulated through the building use space, and that's where the requirements from a zoning standpoint come in. And so we can't tell a business that they can't operate a hookah establishment because we have outlawed hookah. We can tell a business that they need to have this facility with this ventilation, and so on and so forth. And so just be cognizant of that, and we can certainly dive into research on both, depending on what you want to do. But if you want to regulate the business, we need to have code for that. If you want to regulate the property, we need to have code for that. If you want to regulate both, we need to have both in place.
Yes.
So my last thought on this, it's always kind of bugged me for a while, is the storage unit that's on Peachtree Boulevard at the south end of the city. That one parcel is zoned, I believe, I'm going to say CVC or something. It's the only parcel in the entire city that's zoned that. And whatever conversation that needs to be happen to move forward, I think that just needs to be remedied. If they have to be a non-conforming use or whatever, but as far as you look at VC all the way up and down the line, except for that one parcel in there. And I was around when that happened, but I wasn't really, didn't really fully grasp what was going on at the time, because it's been a while. But I think that needs to be looked at again through a different lens, because it didn't really turn out like it was portrayed or sold to us at that time. So that's it. That's kind of a little bit off topic, but not
Yeah.
really.
We spot zone that. I remember when.
I wasn't going to say that out loud.
Call it what it is. Call it what it is.
we were forced to because he wanted to sell it, and it would, if it was not zoned for what he has on it, he couldn't sell it.
It was something like that, yeah, I remember. But
All right.
anyway,
I just want to say, one last, the challenge with both of these items, and this is something we've, as individuals, as the council and with the city managers, we've had the way our code and UDL is set up, it makes it very hard to deal with these things. Separating it out to make it that we can more easily do it is going to be a very large undertaking. My concern of picking certain categories to single out and address opens us up to litigation, and that people are going to say that we're singling them out. So that's a road we have to carefully walk if we're going to.
Absolutely. We do have opportunity with the redo of the UDO to add this language into it. And secondarily, I would say that, where was I going with this? I do apologize. I lost my train of thought. Secondarily, I lost it.
All right. Thank you, sir.
And tertiarily.
All right. Now for the moment everyone's been waiting for, public comments.
All right.
All right, the mayor is the presiding officer. All remarks shall be addressed to the city council as a body, not to individual members. Anyone wishing to speak shall come to the microphone, give us your name and address. Limit remarks to 3 minutes unless further time is granted by council. Not speak a second time until everyone wishing to speak has spoken once, and no one can speak more than twice. And do not speak unless you have the microphone and have been recognized. And with that, I will open it up. Anyone wishing to address council this evening on Longview or anything else, come on up and talk to us.
Councilman First is the
3.
timekeeper, and he will let you know when your time is up.
It could be a little startling. So.
I will keep this one very brief. I just wanted to say the building's beautiful. It's a lot more intimidating, and we're on a swivel versus the old one. There was something very, very comforting and soothing about that constant drip off to the side on any rainy day.
It's all those
It
buckets.
just really puts your mind at ease. So y'all did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, Council, good evening. My name is Jake Bush. I live at 3807 Green Hill Drive here in Chamblee. I am a graduate of Chamblee High School. I was student body president and the editor-in-chief of the newspaper there. I have a long history in Chamblee, and that's continuing now. I'm here tonight because I wanted to speak briefly about the 3715 Longview Drive zoning matter. I am a member of the Brookhaven-Colwell community, the congregation that we are a part of here, me and a few of my friends. And I wanted to just say that, I'm curious why it's taken so long for this process to play itself out, why it's continuing, knowing the value that we bring to the community, the improvements that we seek to bring to the area, specifically Longview, but I think more broadly in Chamblee, the diversity that we bring as a Jewish community. Also speaking for myself as a graduate of Chamblee High School, as a resident now, as a taxpayer, I would expect to feel welcomed with open arms. And while I certainly do love the neighborhood and that I live in, Huntley Hills obviously, and I love the city of Chamblee more broadly, I do feel that there is a feeling of discomfort knowing that this seems like something that is being held up for no apparently good reason. I wonder why parking can't be resolved in a more expeditious manner. I'm familiar with city council happenings and the inner workings. I covered city councils for 2 years up in Cobb County. I know the mess of parking that is Marietta, that can be Smyrna, but I know that those issues can be resolved. So if that's really what's holding it up, then why can't we just come to a quicker agreement? Now, if that isn't what's holding it up, then I wonder if there's something a bit more suspicious and perhaps insidious here, which is some sort of lack of want of a Jewish community in the area. I can't imagine that to be the case because I've only known Chamblee to be a paragon of diversity, a welcoming community, being at one of the most diverse schools in not only DeKalb County, not only the metro Atlanta area, but in all of Georgia and probably all of the country. I know that this is not a place where diversity is turned away, but where it's embraced, where it's welcomed with open arms. So my hope is that we can have a dialogue, that we can hopefully move this forward in a much quicker manner here in the near future, in the near term, because we want to be able to bring all we have to offer, our community service, our community mindedness, our willingness to engage with other groups and other congregations. We want to bring that to the community, and we think that if you just would give us the opportunity to, have this building and have this space, that you would not regret it one bit. Thank you.
folks. My name is Steve Smoke. I own 3700 Longview Drive, directly across the street from the subject property. I stood before you 10, 11 months ago and told you about how the plans for this particular piece of property would bring an incredible amount of traffic onto Longview, your main source of egress, if you would, from Huntley Hills back to historic Chamblee. I still do not understand how this piece of property is even being considered for this use. It originally was a small office building. It should never have been purchased for the intent of using it as a synagogue. It's simply not appropriate. What held true 9, 10, 11 months ago still holds true. We haven't seen any need or any proposals for off-street parking. We haven't seen anything that addresses pedestrian safety. And all of the issues that you folks voted down last spring are still in play. So if this ever comes up again, we would ask you guys to consider it again. Thank you.
Anyone else? This is your 3 minutes.
Silverman. I'm a rabbi in the Toco Hills neighborhood. This project of the purchase of this building to make it into a synagogue is really the project of the organization that I run. And I just wanted to explain a little bit. I'm sensitive, very sensitive to the parking issue as an overriding concern, which Leslie has pointed out many times. And we're anxious to try to find a solution and recognize the concerns of the people that own property in the neighborhood. Just what is unique about the Orthodox tradition is that we are not driving to shul, to synagogue congregation. We're trying to encourage people to live and walk in the neighborhood to the synagogue. Parking would be evening times for classes, and it's usually a relatively small group of people. It's not large. We're not expecting to run a day school, a preschool, or anything like that, where there would be morning traffic. It's mostly weekends, Jewish holidays. There are, granted, a number of Jewish holidays, but the purpose really is to create walking, living people in the community. I would not be a member of the synagogue because I live too far to walk. So that's what we're encouraging. There will be a period of time and circumstances where people will drive, but it's quite limited. And we feel that since, as Jake spoke before, people will be living in the neighborhood, they're sensitive to all of the concerns of parking restrictions, traffic restrictions, and we'd like to try to do whatever is necessary to make it work for the people that live in the community. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any takers? Come on up, Melanie.
Elodie Euchman, 1990 Commodore Lane, Chamblee. First of all, I moved here 30 years ago. One of the first rabbis I met was Rabbi Dave Silverman, and he's been a force in my life throughout the time. Everything he said is really the truth. This is a community that does not drive on the holidays. I mean, there's a lot of restrictions. Driving is one of them. I actually do go to Ariel, which is another Orthodox community on Tilly Mill. The rabbi that runs that synagogue is the founding rabbi. He's actually just about to retire this year. He was one of the first rabbis I ever met when I moved down here. I asked him, how many parking spots do you have at Ariel? Because there is quite a community there after it's something like 35 years since they bought that building. He said, we have 60. I go there and I do drive. The parking lot is empty when I go because they don't drive. They don't drive. So this parking issue is a big deal. And I don't know Jake, but I do know Huntley Hills, Chamblee, the council, the diversity outlook. I believe you have that outlook, and I appreciate it. And this is just another area of that diversity. And I do know Rabbi Shapiro, not that well, because he's been in Brookhaven until this all started happening. And I know he's going to make this a wonderful, wonderful community by bringing this in. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. I said to a group last night, I said, you know, we're fortunate because we live in the greatest city in the world. We really do. You'll find cities that might be fancier than ours and bright and shiny and things, but I guarantee you, you won't find a city that is more welcoming, more loving, more kind, and more accepting than the city of Chamblee, Georgia. And that is reflected in the fact that we are the fastest growing city in the state. People want to move here because they feel that. As the council lady said earlier on another project, it took 17 years to get it done. Things take time sometimes. Doesn't mean it's anything nefarious, it just means government takes time. So I appreciate the comments, I appreciate everyone being with us tonight, and look forward to helping resolve this matter. Thank you. Anything from council? All right. All right, that was it. Do we have executive session this evening?
Not this evening.
Nice. All right, we're out of here. Thank you, guys.